Okay, so why two moderators? Right? Earlier in my talk, I talked about the bias of the cartographer and the sailor. And I think this bias, that the tension, the polarity, represented in sailors and cartographers is perfectly represented by the interactions between me and Angela over time, who have mutually supported each other. And I'm hella Brazilian, she's German as it gets. And, you know, and I thought it would be interesting to have us kind of representing these two sides of the range of on-the-ground, grassroots, and meta-level mathematical understanding of the fractalization of governance systems. And in between us, we have these three actually highly experienced people in existing within DAOs things and DAO states, which is more interesting than just people who have high intellectual understanding, but haven't felt on their skin the political day-to-day of metal flying spiritual shards within DAOs. Right? And me and Livia started together in the same front lines, you know, and then Coordinate became one of the core tools of the space, and Aaron now making his debut as, well, not debut because Govern has been around a long time, but now coming out as a founder and going to put things out, and I'm really excited to see what comes next. But we also go way, way back. I invited him to speak at DAOfest in East Denver 2020, and that's where we met. So with you guys, that's our panel. And the provocation that I'm going to make, and I will then recede or try to recede to the background and let Angela lead the discussion, and I'll probably be the comic relief kind of inadequate asshole, and I do ask you to allow me to do so. But the provocation is state change, right? All of our assumptions about what was good or bad are now getting tested, and where we're allowed to go is being redefined as a way of life and as set of meta communities in Web3. How does this affect goal setting, and how goal setting affects the day-to-day of incentivization, be it financial or otherwise, because there are other types of rewards in the systems that we're talking about. And that's the open question that I'm proposing today, and hopefully we will inspire the other community stewards that are here, contributors of other communities that are here, or people that are thinking of founding things now at this new phase of the cycle, I would say. So thank you for being here. Thank you guys for being here, and let's attack. So I would like to invite them maybe to have a little presentation moment, but I will provoke you to not talk about the organizations you're a part of, and more about your contributor experience so far since you joined Web3. And we can start with Livia, because she has hungry eyes. She felt like she had something to say.
I actually had a question of what is the go, you said go
Setting.
Go setting? What is a go setting?
Define what is the goal of the community, both in the high level goal. Yeah,
goal.
G-O-A-L.
Okay.
Goal
sorry.
setting.
Yeah, goal setting. I think there's two different there's two different understandings of a system you can have. One is the ideological understanding, and the other is the actual system that is happening because contributors are engaging in a certain way. I think my audio is weird. Yeah. So if you think of systems as elements, interconnections, and that are relating because of a purpose, this creates a whole aliveness that sometimes goes in the direction of the mission of the community that was designed by everyone, but then sometimes it's going in a different direction that is not with the ideological goal setting, and then not having means to understand that is quite dangerous. And I think that's why it's interesting to have data analysis to see what is actually happening and not what we're like thinking that's happening, and then creating more rules and more guidelines to try to get to a goal that is just, yeah.
So this is a super interesting provocation. Do I have sound? Yeah. Super interesting provocation. I'm just going to hold it softly, right? The stated mission of the DAO or the group of people, and then a delta that starts to form on what is actually getting done and what to do and how to perceive that delta, how to sense make around that delta. Just underlining the provocation. Does anybody have a story or a reaction that might act as an introduction?
Sure. I mean, I'd say even when the mission is relatively clear and agreed upon, it's still an abstract concept. And even if you agree on a preliminary execution, a product, there's still a question of, does the product actually meet the mission? Does it actually meet the need? And so I don't see that there's just a difference between ideological and sort of lower level or data driven. There are also different ideologies all coming to bear on the same product. So my background is in a lot of early stage startups, web and mobile, and tech has a view, business has a view, design has a view, and the integration of these things, data definitely has an important role in helping people come to consensus, but it only helps so far, right? There's also this interpersonal element, and sometimes an element of having to trust in your peers and move forward from there with incomplete information.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I'm Aaron, by the way. I'm Aaron from Govern. And it's interesting, actually, this idea of goal setting. And I think ultimately I agree with a lot of what Livia and Lawrence have said. It was interesting. When we started Govern, we actually started as a goal-setting platform, essentially. And we set goals from a very top-down perspective. And similar to what Livia was saying, this created a huge issue where what the organization wanted was not what was happening on the ground. And I actually think goal setting is an extremely important piece, especially in decentralized communities, but it needs to become an emergent property. And too often, I think we think of goal setting as a top-down type of scenario. And I think that is dangerous. It's not just dangerous. I think that's what causes rifts and splits within the DAO, within the community.
And that's now trying to get this connected with rewards. How would you maybe give examples? How would you say can rewards underpin goal setting?
Yeah, you want to go?
Go ahead.
I'm happy to just do what I was just saying. I think rewards provide an interesting mechanism where it allows for a lot more iterative and liquid goal setting. You can set goals, and then if you use like decentralized reward systems, it can help create, like reinforce what goals you want to see, right? The goals that ultimately become what the organization works towards is the one that gets the most rewards of the actions contributing towards those goals. And so the rewards piece is actually the feedback mechanism to what we should be working on.
Any other ideas based on Corey Nave's mechanisms, maybe?
To throw a little shout out to UMA here, because they've been playing with this idea they're calling KPI tokens, where so they have some goal, some quantifiable goal. You say 1,000 new signups. And what they'll do is they'll issue a token that's tied to an oracle that will tell them whether or not they got the 1,000 signups. And they'll just give people who are involved in achieving that goal the token right away. But the token will be worth some fraction depending on how close they get to the goal. So if they only get 500 signups, it'll be worth half of what it would be if they got 1,000 signups. So that's not a philosophical point, but it's a clever thing I've seen in the space lately.
Nice. Livia, praise, goal setting.
Yeah, I think I agree with what Aaron said. I think there is this bottom-up construction of what is the mission of the organization. And in the Common Stack, we work with the idea of a cultural build, and that is like creating the guidelines for people to participate in a meaningful way and for them to feel part of changing the rules that they are obeying by if they need to, rules that are also created by them. So it's a whole collaborative process that involves contributors all along, and I think this creates a coherence in the mission and what is happening, and then rewards come to like ratify that and and maybe have data to support the feeling that this is happening.
I wonder, of course, if talking about rewards, everybody's thinking about tokens in the first place. And of course, there is this, you can game rewards, of course, and there's this tension between intrinsic versus extrinsic rewards. Can you maybe share your perspective on this rewards should be, why should rewards be used to set goals?
Yes, happy to jump in again here. So why should rewards be used to help set goals, intrinsic versus extrinsic? And I think that there's like actually a huge narrative problem in the space right now where we talk too much about intrinsic motivation versus extrinsic motivation. And it's like, all of a sudden it's this like either or concept. And I think that's like detrimental. I think it's like hugely detrimental and I actually really hate it. Sorry. But we all agree that intrinsic rewards helps motivate people a lot better. It helps people self-actualize. It helps people do their best work. But at the end of the day, if we want this DAO thing to be worthwhile, people need to be able to pay their rent. And you can't pay your rent in intrinsic rewards. You can't put food on the table in intrinsic rewards. There's this like thing I've been working on. If you're familiar with this idea of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's the idea that to reach self-actualization, you need to have your physiological needs met first, these safety needs met. So I'm working on this idea called DAO's hierarchy of needs, which is for us to be able to intrinsically reward people, what is the base level like of support that we need to give? Anything, and this is where I actually want to go back to bottom up versus top down. And I think the UMA KPI tokens actually have a very dark side to them as well that we've learned from firsthand. Systems will be gamed the more it is top down, right? There's this law I'm forgetting right now.
Law. I'll ask. It's impossible for me to make jokes if you guys need to raise my microphone when I start speaking. Like if I want to make fun of things, Goodhart's law.
Goodhart's law.
But the premise is that the more quantifiable the system is, the more numerically legible it is, the easier it is to game.
Yep. And so people have been using this as an excuse not to set goals and KPIs for a very long time. And like, we're taking this too far. Like we're just taking this too far. We need both. But the more top down the goal is set, the more it will be gamed. That doesn't mean we shouldn't. It just means we need more emergent.
Also called the principal problem. You can Google it if you want. But the idea is it needs to be easier to undo a policy than it is to do a policy, in my opinion, right? Because Goodhart's law is out there, and Goodhart's forest, and I wish Spence was here today because it would be. I never had a like conversation with him in person. Spencer Graham, Google that one too. His useful anti-capture framework. But so since we are all in Goodhart's forest, it's also not an excuse to fall into the tyranny of structurelessness. We have to take bets on forming reward systems, and we need to be able to notice via data when they're falling apart and they're creating ideological outcomes that mismatch with the stated desire of the system. And when you get there, you have an opinion. You can actually say, hey, this is working fine. Through self-analysis, we realize that our ideology is actually this one and not that one, which is not a crime to update your manifesto or your grounding constitution. But we also need to be able to change reward systems. And any reward system will usually create a set of people who gamed it well, either on purpose or by accident, who get the nice side of it, and some people who want it to change. Let's call one the elite and the other the downtrodden or something like this, right? If there's a shift in that reward structure, there's then some form of guaranteed social chaos that will ensue. How do you deal?
I think social chaos is always an opportunity for like embracing the chaos, seeing what the chaos is trying to show and evolving from there. We had something that happened within Praise and the TEC that people started questioning like, oh, are the rewards fair? Is this distribution what should actually be? Could we make proposals to change the system? Is this the system we even need? And most of these questions came about when there was a transition from being a reputation system to a financial, when the reputation that had been accumulated for almost a year was going to turn into a financial token that also had governance power. And then this brought so many questions that Angela and I have been chatting for a long time of like, how do you separate financial rewards from governance power? Why are they in the same token? What are the problems this can cause, and especially coming from a reward system? What are you rewarding? Are you rewarding only contributions that are happening in the DAO, or are you also rewarding financial incentives, like someone putting money into the DAO, for example? Will they also get the same benefits? So I think there's a whole lot of complexity that comes about, and chaos comes, or conflict comes, to show that there is an important topic that needs to be looked at, and that's what happened. And that's a big part of why we have a better praise system now, because we started to look at it and to bring analysis into it and to transform into an actual product.
Okay, so two ideas come to mind of things to mention that might be useful for the audience, and I bet that Lawrence and Aaron have also some. But first, could you try to describe the change of how praise was before, what praise became, and how chaos enabled that evolution, the transformation? My favorite word of the day.
Yeah. It was basically done on spreadsheets, so we didn't have a dashboard for it, and then it was way less people that were involved in it. The workloads were bigger, so having less people involved in quantification, for example, was also somehow contentious, because it's like, who are the people quantifying? Are they quantifying everything? And also some analysis started to be run when that happened. Before, we didn't have any analysis tools. And then we started to look at this data and see, okay, what can we do with it, and what are the challenges of processing this very subjective data? And then from there, metrics were brought in, and analysis methods, and a whole dashboard was created. And then now there's way more people that are part of the quantifications instead of the...
Cool.
Yeah.
So just to open for them, I noticed that we were walking, the word reward was a unit, undifferentiated, and now it has plopped into two possibilities: a rewarding of financial stability, things, Maslow pyramid, and then a rewarding of power, and the intermingling of those. So just opening the conversation. I do have some suggestions on how to deal with this, and maybe at the end, but I actually want to listen to how you guys deal with it. Everybody knows Coordinate? Raise your hand if you know Coordinate.
Awesome.
Good job.
I've only been with the project for about a year, so I can't take credit for all of that, but that's awesome. One sort of meta principle I want to establish here, because we're talking about chaos that is also an opportunity for change, is the importance of short iterations, right? Like, things are easy to change when there isn't this whole unprocessed backlog. Whether that's in an organization or in a personal relationship. The Dao De Jing says, accomplish the great things while they're still small. So process that stuff early and often, right? And it is kind of a weird thing we're asking people to do at Coordinate. You give people something that will be translated into monetary reward. You attach a note to it that's some sort of like personal felt acknowledgement of their contribution, what they mean to you. And people have told us that sometimes the note means more to them than the financial contribution. And it's by no means a solved problem, trying to put our tribal social instincts and our financial structures into the same interaction in an app. But I think we managed to survive and offer something useful to people because we really encourage these frequent iterations, so that each DAO can figure out for themselves how exactly they want to use the tool.
One interesting example of how Coordinate can be used, as it is used in DAO House specifically, you get an extra, so the Coordinate cross-evaluation, you get an extra amount of the house token, but the important part of that is that amount is the amount of shares of power that you're allowed to buy in the DAO. So it's a very small amount of money. It's like a tip for like $50. But in the end of the day, it's actually how you grow your governance capacity at the DAO. So opinions of others on your involvement is the only legitimate way in that DAO to grow your control.
Yeah, so I think actually where govern differs a little bit from both tools, but even more specifically about from Coordinape. So at Govern, you declare your contribution, what you've done, and then other people actually come in and grade it or like attest to whether or not it happened, and then they can do value assignments, how valuable they think that thing was. And to the point that Livia was talking about earlier, what I think helps, I agree also 100% that like chaos is actually a good thing. It's not a good thing, pardon me, but chaos is an alarm that like, yo, let's press this button a little bit more. Like, let's see what happens if we dive down that rabbit hole. But the way you fix dissonance when there's this problem of how to value something is actually with multiple grading periods, with like a retroactive piece to it. Because some things you don't understand the value of until later on, and also rather because it didn't blossom into its full potential, or you just didn't really know about it, there can be any number of reasons. And I think Coordinape also has a system of this with their epoch methods, where each epoch you can do a new, like you give rewards within an epoch, so it's an iterative game. What Govern does a little bit differently, and what I am personally very excited about, is that you have a single record of the thing you've done, and then you can value that at many different points in time. You can value it today, you can value it in a month, you could value it in 10 years, right? It's retroactive public goods funding to every contribution you do, which allows for corrections of the system. To say, yo, we messed this up the first time, let's go recorrect it now. And also to that point, it separates out the work you do from the rewards that you're earning. So you could have one value be given to it that's purely a financial value, and then you could have another value be given to it that's a governance value. Right? So you can layer on all these different reward systems to ensure that the ultimate compensation, if you will, matches what the DAO thinks it's worth.
Now I wonder, we talked about change and chaos, so I guess we are all facing a particular phase in crypto, and this change in this today could mean that we have to somehow cut rewards. So could you envision what will happen to our DAOs if the reward systems are under pressure?
I mean, the system stays the same, the numbers just go down. and you know, what happens when that happens is a people problem. That's an invitation for conflict resolution and debate. And the system as we built it, you know, that can invite that conversation, but it doesn't solve it. You know, that's something people have to do.
I think there's a dangerous assumption here. I want to provoke you, Lawrence, that the numbers will deflate proportionally across the work streams.
Oh, I'm not assuming that.
And it's not what happens, right? There's certain types of initiatives that get cut before others, and there needs to be a conversation about prioritization. And oftentimes, the people that join the DAO space from more creative social contribution sites, they already have accumulated trauma from having been undervalued in other places, found a little bit of a Disneyland of work in the DAO space at the last bull run, because DAOs didn't really exist before. And now they're saying, they're hearing, sorry guys, it's fun, but now all money goes to the devs because we have to ship the thing. And these people who are already dealing with emotional trauma of being undervalued, who thought they had found a new home, are now getting like, they're getting pissed, basically. Are you guys seeing that across the DAOs?
Yeah, no, we 100% are. Like, let's be super clear here. Let's be so clear here. DAOs are getting tried in a way that they've never had. I really want to point, if like you have a free, I don't know, couple hours, go check out the discourse or the forum on Gitcoin DAO. I think Gitcoin DAO is like one of the best DAOs that we can be learning from right now. In general, they're like doing stuff that isn't financially motivated, but they're like addressing really hard problems where they kind of had these posts like, we need to cut grant funding by like 50%. Like these crazy numbers, right? To try to make up for this. You go talk to, there's a bunch of stewards here. Go talk to the stewards. Ask them about the problems that they're facing. We're not even talking about how the stewards are getting paid for the work that they're doing. We're just talking about the ecosystem. DAOs are facing really hard conversations right now. It's not just Gitcoin. Every DAO we're working with is facing this problem right now. It's actually why I really like things like Praise, because I think it offers alternative ways of kind of reward systems. But I think we're going to see what happens like after all of this.
Yeah, it also has been challenging for us, I think, because we haven't understood yet how to bring financial abundance to public goods. And then that is the main challenge, and everything that falls under that, which is all the contributions that happen in a DAO that is focused on public goods, or how are people paying their bills by participating in that community, because we're not in a place where it's so abundant yet. We're still like living in the gates of capitalism, and we need our basic needs to be met.
Yeah, I was talking to a couple people about this, that people, I don't think, don't like paying. It's not that people don't like paying taxes, but people really don't like paying taxes for things that they feel like they don't have control over. And I think that's what happened. The bull market, it didn't really matter. We were willing to yeet our money into whatever because it just kept on going up, right? And now the bear market's happening, and here we are at a beautiful conference, but also we like are being a lot more particular about where we send money, because we're like, wait, I actually haven't had a hand on the steering wheel. Wait, I actually haven't been able to govern what's going on. And that's the problem, right? We don't know how to work in a abundance mindset yet. We're still stuck in the scarcity idea.
I think both are going to exist forever. You can't really make the other one disappear.
Yeah.
But I was facilitating a conflict, and I suggested, but the devs made pretty good money. Why don't I also reduce the devs' pay? And then people just softly did that, and the conversation moved on. Nobody talked about it.
Should we reduce the devs' pay? I think that's up to each DAO.
It's super dangerous, because then your dev talent becomes attackable. But I still thought it was an idea to throw out there to see what happened. Sorry, Lawrence, you had something to say.
Worth trying. Oh, I was just going to say, I like your invocation of the abundance mindset, because that goes back to the recognition that it's within the mind of the people in the DAO where these decisions are happening, right? The bear market is revealing our sort of like emotional attack surfaces, if you will, and actually there's an opportunity there as well for us to ask ourselves hard questions about what we're building, what we want to see survive the bear market, and how to skill up and level up to make that possible.
Yes.
I think, I guess there are pretty good examples, though. I would not agree that DAOs, at the ultimate, when DAOs are under pressure, they will fall back to this, okay, we need the devs and nothing else. I guess our experience with particular the design of rewards has enabled different perspectives on what is really relevant for DAOs. Maybe you can share some insights here on what's your take on that, the visibility of value via rewards, via rewarding them.
Yeah, I think maybe it's an assumption that everybody in crypto values devs more, or values those people less, or like even the separation within groups, instead of looking at the relationships and how they're happening in a more holistic perspective of how a community wouldn't be a community if all of the pieces weren't there working together. And maybe rewards can, praise, for instance, I think can put a light into this, because you can see a little bit more the relationships. And I guess Coordinate also offers that. You can see how people relate with each other based on the rewards they are giving, and the groups, how they are formed. And maybe an analysis on that would bring a lot more clarity on what is actually important for each community, but also I would be super curious to have that data for the whole ecosystem and seeing how people are relating between DAOs and how some discoveries that happen in one community can be brought to another, and how this builds up.
This is a good segue to tell the audience that all of these talks that you heard since mine until now, until this panel, were curated by another project that also organizes events and is a friend of Yves Persona called the DAOist. And I can give you guys the alpha that the next DAOist is going to be on 15th of September in Berlin. And that's the goal of the project, to create the space in between the DAOs and maybe help that data to emerge by creating these relational opportunities. And that's a good segue to say that we are under economic distress, like all the DAOs, because we're funded by the DAOs, right? And one creative way that we found to navigate out is to make an auction, right? And we believe, and we wanted to actually have it today, but it didn't get ready on time. We believe that every panel should be a tea party, and that we should all be drinking some green tea together. So I'm making myself, by hand, a clay teapot and 8 mugs and a tray that will be glazed and painted by hand, etc. It's a unique object, a one of one, and we're auctioning it as an NFT, and then whoever wins the auction gets the tea set. The auction is now live at the DAOist.co/auction, and I got my first bid. That's why I remembered to talk about it, because Sasha was probably frustrated that I should have talked about it in the beginning. And you guys can go and check it out. The process of making that thing is being documented into a mini documentary. And I think that type of mechanic that's being used here for a silly tea set should also be used by DAOs in general, which is having a way to tell the story of some work in progress and have it be funded and then co-governed by the people that care about it, which is kind of a DAO for, a mini sub-DAO for each contribution kind of a thing. So yeah, I have to, it's the sponsor's announcement. Go check it out.
I think something that you're bringing up now, which I think is really important and related to this whole discussion, we, I think, got lazy and we were like, devs are the only people that create stuff. But I actually think that we are all creatives here. Creatives aren't just artists. Creatives aren't just developers. Creatives aren't just anyone. Creatives to me are anyone that is creating something. And that's like, maybe we should change like bear market is for building. Like I actually think maybe bear market is for creating. And we might default to funding devs because like that just feels like the most tangible creation. But that's like not true at all. I like actually invite people to go back to the like bear markets from before, and you'll see the things created more so were actually communities that were being created. It was artwork being created, right? And so like bear markets are for creating. We are all creatives here right now. You don't have to be coding something to create. Like go create, like we gotta create something, a teapot, whatever it is, like let's just create.
But I absolutely agree with that.
But we need the numbers to see if that's actually what's happening. Like that's what you said.
No, I think what I was going to say is like, how are we going to reward everything that is being created? How can people feel like the contributions they are giving, it's not being taken for granted, and that they are receiving what they actually need? And they might not need financial rewards. They might need other things. Yeah. And I think having awareness of what are multiple types of rewards that can exist in a certain community and how are people receiving them is really important, because, for example, in the TEC, when asking people what they value the most, the first question, no doubt, is education. I love how much I'm learning here. I love the vibes in the community. I love being part of something meaningful. And maybe this is enough for a lot of people. And maybe having that as a first step, while we are in a moment where we can't offer so much in terms of like, hey, you come here and you're gonna pay your rent, your food, your child's school, your health, you know, we can't offer that yet. So what is the bridges that we're building to get into a place where the system grew so healthy that it's ready to be abundant?
Yeah, I think that is the right question to be asking. My belief is that there isn't. I think it's great that there's 3 reward systems up here right now, because I actually in the future don't believe there's going to be one reward system. I think ultimately we need a bajillion reward systems to exist. That's the only way that this actually works. Like, the only way this works is if each reward system is designed to accomplish a different goal. There will never be one reward. There's never going to be one ring to rule them all. There's never going to be one reward system that fixes all the problems. We're all going to be able to do a different thing, and I think it's going to take all three things in like rewarding different types of things to be able to make it up. So I really agree that I really liked your point about having different types of reward systems to be able to accomplish different types of goals.
I would love to take a different direction because, Livy, you mentioned UBI, stability, cover, the most important things, and then take it from there. Now, we were discussing change. What about the competitive element of rewards? So it feels like, how can we deal with competition, and how is it actually a goal? Competition, searching for the best. I mean, I guess we all have to search for the best, for the right people, for their energy to make DAOs successful. What's your take on competition and rewards?
I would say it's useful in moderation. I think we certainly don't want people who are so driven by competition that they're going to not cooperate when they need them to. But a little friendly competition never hurt. Like right now within Coordinate, we have 2 different product pods focused on different aspects. And sort of jokingly, they started competing with each other, but it's actually helping them motivate themselves. So I think in moderation, there's no harm.
Mm-hmm.
And how does moderation look like? Just so we...
when you see it.
It's like love.
Exactly.
No, I'm gonna softly hold this. I think the moderation we're talking here is when the competing agent sets are not ever playing around with mutual annihilation. So when you never cross when the competition is purely based on adding more instead of subtracting from the capacities of the other side, in my opinion, that's the sorry.
Brilliant. Yeah, non-zero sum.
Any other thoughts?
We debated a lot having a leaderboard or not. Like, are we gonna top praise contributors, and what is the feeling that can cause? In the end, I feel like, looking to the TC folks here, but in the end, I feel like it was seen as something positive to have the leaderboard, just to have this feeling of accomplishment if you are on the top, or a feeling of being seen in a different way, or even an informative of like, who are the people that have been contributing the most now, so if I'm new in the community, I can know how to navigate. I think competition can be somehow healthy if the culture can support that, but if it's a culture that is mean, I don't think then it's the worst. Yeah.
And there's another element too, which is inequality, basically the range of inequality, the Gini coefficient, and that's a really spicy thing to confront. Given the market rates for devs and so forth, to see that you're looking at the coordinate map for a given epoch, and that someone got some large multiple of what someone else got, and to have people on both sides of that, like arguing, oh, we should be more egalitarian because that just feels good to me, that's the kind of community I want to belong to, versus no, this is just the state of things, and we're going to lose our competitive advantage if we don't have that sort of thing. I think it's the sort of thing that a community has to solve for itself, and even though I accept that there are these market dynamics and that we have to respect them as sort of a force in reality, I think it's very interesting that one of the things that's happening with Coordinate, at least when we're using it for ourselves, is that because we see these, there is this sort of natural tribal instinct to reduce that gap. And I do think that contributes to a certain kind of like camaraderie or like mutual trust that would not be possible otherwise. I think of how, like in pirate ships, the captain only got like 1.5 times as much pay as everybody else. It was very capped, actually. And yeah, you can't really have the spirit of going off on an adventure together and like laying things on the line for each other if there is a lot of inequality.
Okay, feature request idea for all the reward platform builders out there. What if the inequality coefficient that is emerging from the generative reward decision making on something like Coordinate was legible? What if you had cybernetic navigation of that coefficient? How would it change the behavior of the agents?
Good question.
Just keep it in your pocket.
Goodhart's law?
Huh?
Goodhart's law?
But like for good, because you're actually quantifying, you're quantifying the delta. But
Yeah, I was curious about coordinate dynamics between people. Are people aware of how much other people received?
you can see it, and it's actually like a thickness of the line. It's really cool. And then people like group together.
Yeah, so if you can see it, have you experienced any conflicts between, like, oh, you gave more to that part, or people feeling unvalued, or some type of competition arising from that distribution?
We did have one group where they said some people within their DAO were engaging in revenge giving, where someone thought they were undercompensated, and so they undercompensated the other person the next time around.
But this is the system learning about itself too.
Yeah,
I think it's
exactly,
encouraged, in my opinion, because then it acts as an enabler for conversations that should have happened before, never happened, and then the presence of a hyper-aware practitioner would allow for that to be managed, that polarity, right? I would welcome that if I was working in that system.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
Now let's take it one step further. We talked about competition, rewards. There's a downside of the transparency that we have. So on one hand, it's really cool to see what a community values, also to what extent in quantifiable measures. But then this also, of course, you can compare yourself to others. You can, others see how you progress. And then this big topic of mental health in DAOs, being just burned in DAOs via rewards and via transparency. So what can we do?
I think that's great. Yeah, these reward systems, the quantification, the making things legible, it's just the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot more that needs to be in place for an organization to be healthy, right? Like it's different if I see someone receiving a certain amount and I have some personal relationship with them. I have some sense of trust, some rapport, some sense that they also value me for what I do, and that is only built the old-fashioned way. Right, like in continually showing up together, in safe spaces, developing relationships, developing rapport, and so the last thing I want to do is impose this tool on a new group and say it's going to solve all your problems. Like it's going to solve one particular problem, but being a healthy group of people, this using the same primal technology that we've been running for tens of thousands of years, it's not going to solve that problem.
I think, I agree with you that I think culture is the base. If there are processes you can rely on if something goes wrong, and there is people that you can trust and you can talk to. In the TC, for example, we have Gravity, that is the conflict management working group, and Ostrom has that also as a principle of having conflict resolution at little or no cost. So having that available, and I think making people aware that this is, conflict happens and we don't want it to happen, but if it happens, we can deal with it and find what is the opportunity for growth and development in it.
Can I create the dark matter working group for conflict enjoyment? Because I have qualms with this term conflict resolution. When people see pain in a social system, they rush to try to appease it. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that people make. Creating space for pain is one of the best ways for the system to learn about itself.
Rewards for conflicts.
Exactly. It's as if you have a patient. I'm a grumpy person, and in my megalomania, sometimes I think of myself a little bit similar to Gregory House. and I watch house all the time. And I like the approach of having the patient feel the pain, right? If you just, give them morphine immediately, it's over. You're never going to find out what's actually happening. You have to create space for that pain to exist. And I think the word resolution here is misleading. So I want to create the conflict enjoyment working group.
Actually, resolution is a misleading word because that's what Ostrom says, resolution. But then Juanca, who is our steward of the Gravity Working Group, he talks about management, reward, conflict management. You're getting in with the conflict. You're not, you might resolute it, but you might not. Yeah.
Polarity management.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, conflict management. Hard to see you agree that more pain should be felt in DAOs, but no, I get the point, and I do agree with that actually. It's quite pointedly to the idea that rewards creates a lot of like how do you deal with people that aren't receiving a lot of rewards, right? How are they supposed to interact in the system? And I think it's twofold. Like the approach that we have taken is that like you should be able to have a record of everything you do no matter what. So that way like you can do something for yourself, right? I think self-empowerment is one of the strongest forms of empowerment. So you do something because you think it's a good idea, you declare that and you have a record of this contribution, and then other people can reward it. So first we change the mindset of like you're doing something for yourself that you think is going to benefit this community as a whole. And then two, I think what's really important in all of these things, whenever you have a reward system, you need to include some documentation or material, how to use the reward system, how to interpret the reward system, how to learn from the reward system. And that's something I don't think we talk about enough. If you're doing things that aren't achieving rewards, the idea is not to then keep on doing that thing and then yell into the dark, dark void about, why is no one valuing this? I've made so many pet rocks. It's like, well, yeah, it's like, okay, we get it. Pet rocks are dope, but...
Yeah, this is a good point that deserves to be underlined.
Right.
Good reward systems, they are easily navigable.
Yes, you need to be able to look at that's a benefit of a transparent reward system, is that you can look at the ecosystem and you can see, oh, this is the types of things this community is rewarding. And you have two options at that point. You can either start doing more of that to earn some reputational reward, or you say, you know what, I think this community is whack. They are obviously valuing something that I don't find important. And then they go start a new community. And they're like, in my community, we're going to reward a lot of pet rocks because that's what we think is important. And you can assemble that way. And that is the key difference between like Web 2 rewards and Web 3 rewards. Web 3 rewards are transparent. You can curate it into the way that you want, or you can leave it. And I think that's something that all three of our systems have. It's, whether it's praise or coordinate, both of them allow you to, or govern, it allows you to, people are saying what they are rewarding. So you both see the associated value and the reward thing itself. And I think that is an incredibly, incredibly, incredibly valuable thing for the learning process of reward system. If your reward system doesn't have a learning process, that's the first thing you should go do, by the way.
Cool, you mentioned learning from the results, and you've mentioned analytics a couple of times. Can you give us good examples of a community learning from or taking benefits from the transparency and really has established a process or maybe a good way to take these learnings? We have to build it.
I actually came up with a feature request from what you just said.
Yeah.
Because, cool, so check this out. A very well-documented reward system will have something that's painful to build, which is sort of the growth map, let's put it this way, a documentation where you know what to do and what gets each reward. But that will, in its turn, calcify a behavior pattern that is actually not tested. You don't know if it's the best way. So that will, because it's painful to update that thing, either or, you're going to end up with a outdated map that doesn't actually help anyone, or you're not going to learn as fast as you could because you want to respect that map. So there's a possible problem there. What if then there was an oracle that's actually reading and doing sentiment analysis on the proposals and the payouts and mapping contextually what that reward system looks like? But hard to do, needs devs. Devs expensive. So working group, do a monthly analysis of the payouts, that might solve it. feature request.
Yeah, Felipe just described, we have a whole research arm of Govern that Livia actually works on and a couple other people work on. Big shout outs to Christine, Ellie, Nick, and Zargum, if you're watching, is doing just that. They're building a system that can analyze the results, kind of what the TECs does as well, and coordinate as well, and see what this community is valuing. I don't think any community does this so well, to answer your point. The best advice I give is that you need to establish rituals in your community. Rituals are a good way for people to do something that makes sense in a story or a meme. Every morning we say GM and say what you're going to do. Every Friday we have all hands that says what you have done, and we look at the contributions made this week. Whatever it is, establish your ritual so that everybody can learn from each other. A learning method that we want to explore, that we've been playing around, is something called Chevruta, but it's really just the idea of pairwise learning, which is that everybody gets a buddy when they join an organization, and you and your buddy explore learnings together, and you challenge each other on what the right ideas are. And once a week, everyone comes back together and shares their learnings. So the rituals are like, you incorporate the learning into your rituals.
Yeah, also on transparency, I want to give a shout out to Zeptimus and Ivy that are here, that started the transparency working group in the Token Engineering Commons, and it has been one of the most foundational working groups actually for the health of the DAO, because they do audits and analysis, and they record all the calls, so there is infinite learning material about what is happening in the community, and also this accountability factor that everyone knows that you can find everything that's happening, and they also track the token behavior and how proposals are delivering, which proposals passing, with how many votes, who participated. So there's a whole like granular look into the transparency of the organization, and I think that is a complement to reward systems that also offer that type of transparency, that you can see what contributions are being made, what people are valuing, what they have to say about that, how much governance power they have, how participatory they are being in the community. So I think transparency might be uncomfortable at first, but I don't think it's ever something bad.
That's really cool to know. Really cool. So we're coming to our last 5 minutes. So if there's something you needed to say and you haven't said yet, let it rise. Like a cupcake.
There is no one way to do rewards. I can't stress this enough. I can't stress this enough. Not to sound cliche here, the journey is the destination. A lot of people see we are gonna build the perfect compensation system, and we're gonna do the song and dance, and we're gonna get to this final state, and boom, you got it, delivered. That's just not the way it works. I think something that's highlighted in the last however long we've been talking is that more learning, more of the rewards is determined in determining the reward system in the conversations that happened. The journey is the destination. Coming up with the reward system, evaluating it, and layering on a lot of different reward systems is the actual part. That is what rewards are. It's not this end goal. It's not this button you press. It's everything leading up to the button you press. And the more that we can think like that, the more that we'll have more equitable reward systems for everybody. And I guess the other thing I want to highlight that I want to leave everybody with, not leave everybody with, but start thinking about, and correct me if I'm wrong, both other people on the panel, but I don't think we ever envision rewards of a DAO to stay within a DAO. I think we think of DAOs as way too hard line edges, right? It's much more of a porous edge. I think what our end state is that these reward systems can be used across everybody in the world, in the ecosystem. It's not just within your DAO. You are creating a reward system for everybody that you ever interact with. And that's really the mind-boggling, blowing part. And that's really exciting. And so ask yourself, what's the reward system that you want to be giving to other people? How do you want to reward other people? Because once we all come up with our individual reward system and we layer all those up, then I think we're actually solving some of the issues that we've been talking about today.
Yeah.
Sorry.
drop.
Mic drop. Yeah.
Yeah, big +1 to both of those things. We're still early. We're still really, really early, both in terms of our understanding of what we're actually trying to do here as groups of people, and in the types of primitives that are going to make interactions possible that weren't possible a year ago. There's lots of interesting streaming primitives coming out now. There's things like Gitcoin Aqueduct and airdrop shrines and ways of structuring automatic redistribution of payments that we're just beginning to play with. People are just putting them out there and seeing what happens. And the other thing is, my favorite way to talk about Coordinape is we create a space for people to talk about money, which is actually talking about values. And if we structure that conversation in the right way, they come out of that a stronger and better group. And I don't think it's just DAOs that need to do that work. Like, everyone can benefit from that kind of conversation.
All families should do Coordinape. Your San Francisco community house should use Coordinape.
And if I can bring something to, if there's people out there listening to this that are working
There's
on
at least
rewards.
one person, Livia. Go for it.
No, that are working on reward systems. I don't know if everybody here is working on reward systems.
Everyone is. We all have Instagram.
Thanks for the information. Yeah, to look into data collection. Angela and I were organizing, Angela organized the DAO reward system research in the Token Engineering Academy, that we had a 4-month research with amazing people and projects and results. And the biggest challenge, in my opinion, was the lack of data projects had about their contributions. And if people could track a little more, that would make it so much easier for anyone to do analysis.
Well, so I want to give where's the camera? I want to give a shout out for everybody in the audience. If you're working between governance, DAOs, and zero knowledge, call me now. Because what she's talking about is going to become so much more powerful after that data collection isn't invasive. And participation is going to grow. And I go to bed desperate because I know the backlash against DAO is coming from Tradverse. And I'm so happy that they're going to spend the next 2 years discussing stablecoins. Thank you, Luna. Because it buys us some time. But they'll come for DAOs. And we need ZK. It's my final shout out.
Right, and to add on that one, I guess it's a perfect time to invest into understanding. I mean, we did so much experiments, but now it's the time to draw the learnings from it. And in token engineering, of course, we like to look at data. I guess we should establish much more, not only data collection, but also how to establish a process to create insights and then enhance with qualitative insights. I guess it's really a huge opportunity to have both, and to have both valued in the same way. Because what I take from DAOs is that it's really, traditional businesses tend to, you have your business intelligence, you have to KPIs, and that's oriented towards quantifiable contributions. But now, with these new tools, we are approaching a new level in what we can value, what we can, how to create visibility, and now we have to, better understand what's actually going on in DAOs as emerging systems, ever-changing systems, and then I'm super positive about DAOs, I must say. Right.
I'm satisfied with that being our closing statement. Anyway.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, guys, you can go party now. Go drink. Have fun.
Right.